Let me take you back to where it all began, a love story that felt like it was written in the stars. His name was Ethan, and he was my everything. We met in college, two young dreamers with our whole lives ahead of us. He was the kind of guy who could light up a room with his smile, and from the moment we started dating, I knew he was the one. Our relationship was everything I ever wanted. We traveled the world together, built a home, and shared dreams of starting a family. For years, it felt like we were untouchable. But as time went on, I started noticing little cracks in our perfect life. Ethan's job became more demanding, and he was always working late. The romantic gestures became fewer and farther between, and the intimacy we once shared started to fade. I tried to talk to him about it, but he'd always brush me off, saying he was just stressed and needed time to focus on his career. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I felt like something was missing. I felt lonely, even when he was right beside me. That's when I decided to take a solo trip to Mexico. I needed a break, some time to clear my head and figure out what I really wanted. Little did I know, that trip would change my life forever. It was my second day in Cancun when I met him. His name was Carlos, and he was unlike anyone I'd ever met before. At 60 years old, he had this magnetic energy about him, a confidence and charm that drew me in. We started talking at the hotel bar, and before I knew it, we were sharing stories like old friends. He was funny, kind, and had a way of making me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. One thing led to another, and we ended up spending the night together. It was impulsive, reckless, and completely out of character for me. But in that moment, it felt like exactly what I needed. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed and a note that said, "Thank you for a beautiful night. Take care of yourself." I didn't think much of it at the time. It was a one-night stand, a moment of passion that I assumed would stay in Mexico. But life had other plans. A few weeks after returning home, I started feeling off. I was tired all the time, nauseous, and my emotions were all over the place. When I took a pregnancy test, my heart sank. I was pregnant, and I knew it wasn't Ethan's. The guilt was overwhelming. How could I tell Ethan that I'd cheated on him, let alone that I was carrying someone else's child? I tried to convince myself that it was just a mistake, that I could figure it out on my own. But as the weeks went by, the truth became harder to hide. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat Ethan down and told him everything. The trip, Carlos, the pregnancy, I laid it all out on the table. The look on his face broke my heart. He didn't yell or scream. He just sat there in silence, tears streaming down his face. "How could you do this to us?" he finally asked, his voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. All I could say was, "I'm so sorry." Ethan moved out the next day, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. But as much as I wanted to wallow in my guilt, I knew I had to take responsibility for my actions. I reached out to Carlos, hoping he would at least want to be involved in the baby's life. When I finally got a hold of him, his reaction was not what I expected. He was shocked, of course, but he also seemed relieved. That's when he dropped the bombshell. "I have a daughter your age," he said. "She's been trying to have a baby for years, but she can't. If you're willing, I'd like to help raise this child with you, not as a father, but as a grandfather." I was speechless. The man I thought was just a fling was offering me a lifeline, a chance to give my child a family. But it also meant facing the reality that my life would never be the same. As the months passed, Carlos became an unexpected pillar of support. He wasn't just a presence in my life. He was determined to make sure the baby had a stable future. He had built multiple successful businesses in his lifetime, and he saw something in me that I hadn't yet recognized in myself: resilience. Carlos proposed an idea, starting a company together, something that would secure a legacy for his grandchild. He had the experience, and I had the drive. We started small, an online boutique that catered to high-end maternity and baby products, something we both felt deeply connected to. At first, I was hesitant, but as the business grew, I found purpose in it. It became more than just a way to provide for my child. It became a passion. Over the years, what started as a small boutique multi-million-dollar brand, and eventually, a billion-dollar empire. Through all of this, my son grew up surrounded by love. Ethan, despite the betrayal, found a way to forgive me. He eventually remarried, and though it took time, we found a way to coexist as friends. Carlos was more than a grandfather. He was a mentor, a guide, and the reason I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. Looking back, that one night in Mexico changed everything. It led to heartbreak, but it also led to rebirth. Love, betrayal, and mistakes, they all play a part in shaping us. But in the end, it's what we do with those moments that define who we become. So, what's the moral of my story? Maybe it's that life doesn't always go according to plan, and sometimes the choices we make have consequences we never could have imagined. But even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance for redemption, for growth, and for love in unexpected places. As for Ethan, Carlos, and me,